right? So I'm not the captain of the ship, right? But I'm just a guiding influence, right? I'm a steady presence. And so if I could be the lighthouse and allow them to begin to captain a bit the ship, right? That's where the real juice, kind of lies. That's where the shift happens. Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with Thomas Miller. Are you tired of your tweens, teens, and young adults' negative behaviors and poor choices holding you emotionally hostage, controlling your family, and ruling your life? If you answered yes, then you are in the right place. This podcast is a community for courageous parents just like you who come here to gain effective tools, skills, and take action so they can change their tween, teen, or young adult's life and improve their family's future. Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with your host, Thomas Miller. So glad that you can join us. Today's topic is what I thought versus what I know now. So basically, a lot of dumb assumptions, right? that we've all made about being a parent. And we're going to look at what we thought it was going to be versus what it is. I came up with this. I do love, of course, when folks come up with topics. So again, if you haven't already followed the newsletter, please do so. And then always shoot me an email, which of course you can get me at fourpeaksparents.com. But I did throw out to one of the Four Peaks Parents groups this week to get a few assumptions from folks. I have one that I'm going to own the hell out of. That's definitely mine. But I did come up with the topic, what I thought versus what I know now. And all of us, right? Any parent, holy crap, right? We go into this with strong ideas about how it should be, how it's going to go, what kind of parent we're going to be, right? We're going to, oh my God, we're going to have six-pack abs. We're going to, I don't even know, we're going to somehow be just super amazing at it, never lose our cool, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be that, or it's going to be fun, whatever the hell we thought, right? And then we get into it and we find out, holy crap, it is a hell of a lot different and harder than what we thought. The reason for that is that these are human beings, right? Our children are real. I hope you have a real child, by the way. That will be kind of scary if one day I'm doing this podcast and talking about robots, but you never know. We might be there. So yeah, we find out that real life, real kids, real emotions shift everything. It's super humbling too, right? I think we all need to make sure we don't have glass jaws, right? Because how many times do you get punched in the face by this crazy job called parenting? And we also have to just realize that our original assumptions were just off, and that's okay. And we're not stupid, and we're not morons, and we're not that, right? We're just learning, and we're learning in real time. One of the things I say a lot to the families I coach in either the group or the individual model of the Four Peaks Parents program is you are becoming, right? We're always just becoming. I hate the whole I've arrived BS line, because the moment you say that, you're effed, because guess what? Things are going to move, right? There's going to be some mental health issue that you never foresaw with your child. There's going to be some learning challenge. Things are going to happen in society, COVID. They're going to have some crazy, unhealthy girlfriend or boyfriend. Their friend, may or may not be putting a lot of peer pressure on them. There might be bullying. There's a million things that we can never anticipate, right? So how many of us, myself included, right, go into this role thinking this is going to work this way, how it's supposed to be, who our kids will become? I hear that a lot. A lot of times parents are trying to reverse engineer their actions today based on who their child will be and try to create this trajectory. And there's some value in, obviously, if your child wants to be some Olympic gymnast, then yes, there's going to be a clear journey for that. If your child, is really passionate about, biotech or science or STEM or whatever that is, then yes, get them more involved in robotics. But we cannot be trying to create the most linear, oh my God, path between now and when they're 22. You're going to drive yourself insane. So our kids have a way of breaking our assumptions wide open. That's why I love working with kids. I've been working with kids since 1999. My first internship was in an elementary school. And it's just great because they're so in the here and now. They can smell a rat, by the way. Teens especially are the best at being able to determine which therapist or professional or teacher is truly authentic in themselves, because everything is so real, right? So you cannot fake it till you make it with teens. That's why I love them. And so let's dive in and look at, a few of the assumptions. Again, I got these from one of the Four Peaks parents groups that folks threw out there. Again, I'm going to own the second one. The second one is totally me. But the first one, which I hear a lot, is if I do everything right, then they'll turn out fine. Okay. So there's a lot in that statement. And if you've been there, raise your hand, right? Have you ever thought, hey, I'm just going to do everything right. I'm going to provide, right, consistent structure. I'm going to show up to all the games. I'm going to, give them the organic food, and boom, you get a responsible, emotionally healthy adult, right? Not hating on the structure, not hating on showing up to all the games, not hating on the organic food. My wife and I are big fans of food equals medicine, and we purposely chose to raise our kids in an attachment-based way. Big fans of what's called attachment theory. You could definitely look into that more, and you always want to create what's called a secure attachment. Again, that's not enmeshment or codependency. That's just a really solid, deep relationship that functions like a springboard to which your kids, right, can leap off of. They get to internalize and generalize. So again, I'm not hating on anybody, right, who viewed parenting like an equation, where it's as simple as A plus B equals C, right? Consistency, structure, being present, and then boom, right? You got that child. It's just that, as you know, kids aren't products of perfect parenting. There's so many parents over the years that I have coached and worked with who are fantastic in so many areas, and their children have struggled with mental health, addiction issues, learning challenges, what have you. There's other times that, of course, there's systemic issues, meaning that there's some flaws or chinks in the armor, let's say, of that family culture that certainly have created, played a role in creating, I should say, anxiety, right? Have created certainly a sense of clinginess, whether because that's a codependent or a meshed parent, or there's been a sense of rejection, and maybe that's created a little bit of depression because you have an aloof, distant, and distal, say, parent or parent system, or there's chaos, right, and dysfunctionality, which creates trauma and creates a lot of instability. So again, we can absolutely create a super healthy culture that will create the most optimal environment to set our kids up for success. I think that's why you're listening to this podcast, right? I hope is that we always could start with us and figure out like, what the heck could we do better to go good to great? But at the end of the day, there is no perfect parenting per se formula that creates the perfect child, right? Your child or children, right? They're people. They got their own wiring, their own stories, their own struggles. And guess what? I said this the other day, unfortunately, to this family, which is very true, that their teen is one relationship away from being in a really healthy place and one relationship away from being in a very unhealthy place. This teen struggles, unfortunately, with boundaries. They struggle with their own clear sense of self. I was saying they're almost like a thin-skinned grape, which is a Pinot Noir, by the way. I learned that from the movie Sideways. No Merlot. If you haven't seen that movie, it's fantastic. So that teen absorbs and takes on a lot, right? And so, those are things that on some level, of course, the family could do a better job of trying to build that teen up and letting that teen also fail forward and choose their choices. But at the end of the day, if you have a thin-skinned grape, right, there's things that you can do, absolutely, to desensitize them and expose them to a little bit of adversity or hard, let them fail, right? Try to help them challenge, of course, like we've talked about in previous episodes, their inner critics. However, right, that's just how that child is currently expressing their personality. They're a bit on the caretaker side. That may or may not have been a learned behavior. So I'm just trying to show that, we can't just create the perfect child vis-a-vis the perfect method, right? We do want to look at our process. Process does, right, create outcomes. Culture does win championships, in my opinion. That's why I do what I do, to try to help families create a positive shift. But it's not as simple or linear as we might think. Okay. Second assumption, and maybe you can identify with the first one. If I do everything right, they'll turn out fine. Maybe you can't. But if you can, right, it's really important for you to deconstruct that sense of perfection, right? And making sure that you're not so hard baked into a design, or you're not so obsessed, let's say, right, with what you're doing to the point that you're becoming rigid and you're missing the essence or the nuance. Again, I go back to structure. If we're talking about little kids, like, I get it. You want to create a structured routine, right? You want to create a semblance of normalcy, right? Where the kids can expect, right, the ritual, the sleep hygiene effects of beginning to shut the lights off, to have the bath, to have the touch, right, which creates oxytocin, right, to set them up to believe that the world is actually stable and dependable. On the flip side, I remember my wife and I used to disagree at times, right? I was a big fan of, like, let's stretch the kids at times. Let's go on a cool hike. Let's go to that park. It's okay. Not every night, of course, but if they fall asleep in the car, we'll transfer them. No biggie, right? So I was a big adventure guy. I was a big, let's lean into, having them have these experiences, let's say. And I actually was showing my children that part of my parenting was the extension of me vis-a-vis nature, the jumpy house, the playground, the whatever that is, right? Whereas some parents struggle, I think, to get outside of that rigidity of thinking that every single night must be the same exact way and everything has to, right, be so typecast, if you will. On the flip side, right, there are families that work with that don't provide their kid with any structure, and it's super chaotic. And no wonder the child has anxiety, because when we go back and look at that system, right, and we audit kind of that the environs, right, as they were developing and basically, creating everything, neuronally, that system was not, right, consistent. So again, there's a balancing act. So if you're identifying with the assumption of, if I do everything right, they'll turn out fine, take a look at making sure you have, again, a clear vision. I respect your game. I respect your philosophy. Love it. And yet you're not freaking the heck out, right, if your child has a Dorito, let's say. On the flip side, let's not only, right, let our kids have Doritos and or processed food. And a big fan, again, of food is equals medicine, and it's all about modeling there, right? Okay, so the next assumption I see a lot of people falling into, this is mine. So in the group, we all wrote out assumptions that we fall into and how much we realize they're false now that we're OGs in the game, right? The parenting game. So for me, I wrote, good parenting means control. I know that is 100% wrong now. And I wouldn't say that I ever arrived as a parent was like, good parenting equals control. But when I start looking at certain struggles I had in letting go and evolving my game, right, my parenting game as my kids got older, that definitely showed up for me. And I thought if I was clear enough, firm enough, consistent enough, my kids would just follow the path, right? I mean, hello, it makes sense. It works for me. It should work for them, right? But control is a complete illusion, right? It just is, and this really came to a head more recently because I got a 15-year-old on my freaking hands, right? And I got a 12-year-old, soon to be a 13-year-old. So I got two teens. And I'm the biggest fan of encouraging that separation and individuation phase. I've talked about this a bazillion times in previous podcasts, right? Are you flying at the right altitude? You don't want to fly too low, right? And create compression on your child's individuation or identity formation, right? You don't want to obviously fly too high and be aloof. What is or isn't in your circle of control, the first 2 episodes ever of this podcast, where I try to help parents make sure they're aware of what they can and cannot control and not overstepping, right? And trying to manage every little freaking thing. So I get this. I get this so much. And it actually irks me, which is hysterical that I fell into a little bit of this pattern. Irks me when I see parents trying to freaking micromanage the hell out of their kids. I'm the biggest fan of letting my kids skin their knee, experience some adversity, learn from it, fail forward, etc. So I definitely had to check myself before I wreck myself. That is an old reference. Please, hopefully someone out there is like nodding their head and knowing what the hell I'm talking about. I think is that Rex and Effects, I think is the band. I could be wrong. Someone could fact check me on that one. So yeah, control is like totally an illusion. And what I've come to, where I've like arrived in my like development and again, my becoming, is the best thing I can do is model, teach, listen, absolutely put my foot up their asses when they need it, absolutely provide them with clear incentives and natural consequences, but I also got to let go. You know, I obviously need to be an ear. I need to be a shoulder. Definitely need to, again, coach and guide, but not try to control. And it's not about steering the ship, really. It's more like, think of it this way. Like if you're currently believing you're the captain, and that might be important for you to be the captain and have that gift of what I call command, which, trust me, tons of parents I work with don't have the gift of command. And I call it like a bystander effect, right? If you know that phenomenon, it's like, imagine you go to like a building and it's on fire and there's like a child hanging from the window. The more people that arrive, the less likely that child is to be saved. Whereas if it's just one or two or five, right? Someone is immediately like, I'm going to go, right, and climb up that fire escape, or I'm going to go into the building. You call the police, you do this, you call the fire department, etc. So we definitely don't want to be deferring and not have the gift of command. But I've had to realize that I was viewing myself as the captain of the ship, which again, cool. Glad that proud of myself for having enough clarity and vision to really create a very co-design with my wife family culture. Like if you're in the Miller household, you know you're in the Miller household, right? There's a clear culture that's about hard work, perseverance, resiliency, sweat equity, delaying gratification. We try to allow healthy conflict. Sometimes it dips into unhealthy conflict. I try to allow expression of emotionality, vulnerability, authenticity, all that. But I was losing my crap a little bit. Definitely the last year or so, you know, because my kids were emerging and pushing back more. And I was tightening my hold and staying solely wearing that hat of captain. So I had to like move out of that and realize that I'm actually not the captain. I'm actually the freaking lighthouse, right? So I'm not the captain of the ship, right? But I'm just a guiding influence, right? I'm a steady presence. And so if I could be the lighthouse and allow them to begin to captain a bit the ship, right? That's where the real juice, you know, kind of lies. That's where the shift happens. Now, again, I'm not saying you like are the lighthouse for your 4-year-old, because that ain't going to work, right? They don't have that physiological, right, neurodevelopment, cognitive abilities, right, to manifest per se every aspect of their day. But they can have some voice and choice around peas versus carrots, right, and a million other things. So you want to solicit that. But if you're trying to control everything when they're 17, the same way you did when they were 7, whew, you're going to run some serious walls, and it's going to create like a splinter in your relationship, and you're going to drift. You're going to drift. All right. So number 3, and this is such a common thing of the parents that drives me insane. It's really funny, like the assumptions, like what irks you. I have like more empathy for my own, like, you know, trying to control my kids, my negative pattern, if you will, than I do at times for someone else. It's kind of funny. So number 3 is my job is to fix their problems. I actually have none of that, thank God. That hasn't been a struggle for me. And so I'm just going to read a few quotes from some parents, of course, in an anonymous way. But someone said from the 4 Peaks Parents Group, I used to jump in to solve things, a late assignment, a conflict with a coach, whatever the hell it was, you know, issue with the teacher, even potentially setting up play dates and things like that, you know, beyond maybe their role. And I thought I was helping because I thought helping meant fixing. This person, thankfully, right, through the program has so much insights, and they're realizing now that every time they intervened, right, they robbed their kid of a little bit of resiliency. I'm the biggest fan of that chrysalis, the story of the chrysalis, right? How the butterfly becomes the butterfly. It has to work its face off, right, to get out of that cocoon. And in doing so, it spreads all the fluids to its wings. And that process of emerging out of the chrysalis allows it to become the butterfly. And if we were to go in there and just open up that cocoon a little early because we saw it like really struggling and we thought we were helping, and helping meant fixing, it would fall to the ground, right? It would never be able to fly because we didn't allow that fluid, that process to spread all the way out to its wings because their wings would be too heavy. So, one of the things that I offer this family is, ask questions like, do you want help or just a sounding board? Do you want me to listen or do you want me to fix it? Even something as simple as like, oops, I fell into my pattern of fixing again. My bad. Let's reset that. Go again. My fault, my fault, my fault. Sorry, right? Let's run that back. Because every time they try to fix it, not only are they robbing their kid of resiliency, their child is like waiting and bracing for the fixing, and the child is not really feeling heard and not also having to work through and individuate and find their own solutions, right? And what happens there in one of the episodes way back when, where I talked about grieving your child's childhood, I think all of us, we have this like folkloric memory and we're nostalgic, right? About, when we were swaddling our child or the bath or reading, right? We had to do so much. I mean, they literally, oh my God, they couldn't wipe their own freaking butts, right? So it's hard to hit the refresh button. It is. And if you have 2, 3, 4 kids, right? Very hard because you got to code switch and toggle because you have kiddos in different phases. This one I definitely is not, I didn't say this, someone else did, but I was like, damn, I also got this one too. So it's my kids should reflect my values. That, holy crap. So I think, a little bit about my story. Maybe I'll do an episode just on kind of more about me and my story. But I come from a definitely working class, family where never ever would I say we were poor ever. My dad was in a union at 1 year. I think it was 9 months. My mom can fact check me on this one. I think he didn't cross the picket line for about 9 months. So that was rough, right? So a lot of integrity in that system, a lot of hard work in that system, always working, always penny pinching, always saving, saving, saving. Well, we fast forward to now, and my kids are not entitled, thankfully. Big shout out to my wife and I for that one. I could say that unflinchingly. However, Friday night, they're like, oh, should we do Thai or Indian or like acai bowls? And it's like, there's still a part of me in my inner DNA that like, oof, can react. My son at a soccer tournament said, it was probably a year ago, we show up at the fields and he's like, oh, there's grass fields. And like literally it took all of my being not to strangle my son. Like I didn't see turf. I played soccer, I think that, in high school and then beyond in college and so on and so forth. I didn't see turf till I played against Southern Connecticut in college. So, those statements, oof, they really tried my values because I'm really wanting my kids, right, to have this really good sense of industry and work ethic and appreciation and gratitude. Yet I project my own values onto them all the time. And sometimes I personalize their being themselves, which is homeostatic within the environment. A credit to my kiddos is that a lot of times they don't sound like their peers. One of my sons goes to a very affluent school, a school full of affluent students, and they're not going to get a Tesla when they're 16. They're not, and they know this. And yet, so comparatively, my son, thankfully, does not sound or act entitled to the point that people are always like, where are you from? Which is a compliment, because a lot of times people are saying we can't place you in this construct, right? Because your norms and values don't sound like the norms and values of the typical community. So that's really cool. So we got to always kind of look at that, and this one really challenged me because, again, like I thought if I raised them in a certain environment with certain beliefs, they'd grow up to value those things. And that's really more projection, right? We can instill and we can plant seeds, but we don't have to be overt, right, in that. And again, this was not my thing that I've learned, that this is from another parent of the group. And this parent says they had a shift from seeing themselves as the sculptor. Super cool. I love all these metaphors. To being more like the gardener, right? Because they don't have to shape and really overtly shape their child, but they can tend, nurture, and guide. How cool is that? Holy crap. All right. And last but not least, we got 5 amazing assumptions here that are not true. um, if they struggle, I must have failed. This one also, I'm like, come on, people. Like, again, it's so funny when you're objective about stuff and you just see something with 2020 and you're like, really? Like, that's what you. And of course, I always provide empathy and compassion for all the parents that I work with and coach who are in the individual or group model of the Four Peaks Parents Program. For this parent, like, holy crap, this is what a struggle. And I'm so proud of them because they went from being so over identified with every little like academic struggle, emotional struggle, social struggle, to now being able to have a lot more objectivity and pull back. You know, they now understand that pain and growth go hand in hand, and they're okay with letting their kids fail and hit some walls, right? Like, how cool, what a shift. Like, they were out there, the classic, snowplow parenting, removing all the snow or speed bumps, anything. And they get it. This is something I had them write, which is not, I didn't have them write, I asked them to write. And they realized that their major job, super cool, is to be steady, sometimes even silent, but all the time loving. And they don't have to eliminate every obstacle. How freaking cool is that? How cool is that? So there's a lot in here. These were just 5 assumptions, that 2 of which I have to identify with heavily, that the parents working with right now have come to believe are not true. So I would love to hear, shout me out, hit me up with an email. I'd love to hear, what did you believe early on that turned out to not be true? And just one little quick last message, if you're out there like second guessing yourself and realizing that what you thought isn't working, you're not alone. This is called parenting, right? Do not forget, you are becoming. This isn't about like knowing everything, right? And being able to like reverse engineer. And you don't have to get it right the first time. You have tons of time, and just keep evolving and apologize, which I do often, when you screw up. And the best gift that we can give our kids, this is just like me to you right now, like I'm talking right to you. It's not perfection, people. It's just not. And I see so many parents putting so much pressure on themselves trying to be perfect. It's showing them with what growth looks like in real life. And guess what? As you're becoming, so are they. And you could use yourself all the time. All right. So I hope you got a lot out of this. Please, if you haven't already signed up for the newsletter, just go to fourpeaksparents.com and you can do that right there. If you have any questions ever about what the hell is this Four Peaks Parents Program, could it help me and my partner parent better and move my child out of chaos or dysfunction, obviously, right, toward wellness and high functionality, just reach out. It's a free discovery call whenever you want it. And also, again, as you've heard me say, there's a group and an individual model, both of which bring tons of value. And I'm always happy to jump on a call and explore with any family whether or not it's the right fit for you. So I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye. Hey everyone, Thomas here. First off, it means the world to me that you took the time to listen to my podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Also, if you want to receive the latest podcast updates, as well as expert parenting tips and practical strategies for navigating your tween, teen, or young adults challenges directly to your inbox, then sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. And most importantly, if you're tired of feeling overwhelmed, stuck, stressed, and are losing sleep because you're constantly worried about your tween, teen, or young adult, your first step is to realize that you still have a choice and can do something about it. I'm ready to help you take action and create the results you desire today. Just go to fourpeaksparents.com and book a free strategy call. Let's do this. Last thing, while you were listening to this show, who was the one person that you thought could really benefit from hearing it? Please share it with them.